And we're back in. Welcome to Open Gym, folks. If you're tuning in, I'm going to do a little quick preamble here before we wait for some viewers to get on over. You're probably tuning in on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn Live. This is Dan with Think3D Solutions. Looks like we're up and running. I'm joined here by Megan. I'll let her introduce herself in just a moment. And something we're doing a little bit different with this series. So one, welcome to Open Gym. We're back again. We kind of took a stab at this, maybe over a year ago. And just with our schedules and kind of how busy things got for us, it wasn't something super realistic for us to keep up. Now we got a little bit of a different reality as far as our tempo goes. And we got some different team members. So I'll let Tone introduce himself quick because this is new. And we're happy about it. But we got Tone now with a producer cam. There he is.
Hey.
Hello.
Tone, greet all the people.
Hello.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you
Good
too.
to see you, Tone. He'll be running the ones and twos back here on this live stream. Megan, go ahead and introduce yourself for the people. I don't think we've done maybe a podcast with you when you started, or did we not? Did you get out of one?
We filmed it and then it didn't actually upload. So it exists in our ether. It just does not exist literally anywhere because we just never did anything with it and it was utter chaos. So
I think you staged that. I think that's on purpose.
it was maybe a coup.
It should have been a coup.
It may have been a coup.
Yeah, interesting. So give us an intro, Megan.
Yeah. So I'm Megan Jung. I'm the brand and marketing director for Think3D. I started back officially in October, but I've kind of been intimately adjacent to Think3D since about 2017, when I started doing freelance graphics work for Tamian and Bonnie. Kind of met them by happenstance through Josh Novak at what was formerly Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship meeting, and just two finance guys who Tamian still sends me design work in Excel, which blows my mind and is not real life, but that is what it is. So I've always kind of worked and done workbooks for the team. So now I'm here full time, causing utter chaos all the time.
It's strange how that happens, right?
Yeah.
You spend a couple of years just bumming around, and then all of a sudden,
somehow you get roped into
boom,
it.
you're fully employed. So for those of you that are just tuning in, or those of you that will be watching this in the post, as far as the replay goes, the whole idea with some of these things is just to create a little bit more of a interactive or open forum, I'd say, event. Right. This is something where we get a lot of questions in our line of work, doing organizational development, coaching, training, and leadership development. And we wanted a place where we can get with people, whether that's online, taking your questions and comments, fielding questions and comments from our team that we've gathered beforehand. And so the flow to this is going to feel very different almost each time. But today, there's a few topics. We'll get into some surveys and design. We'll get into some organizational coaching and some training things. We'll get into some questions about communication and best practices in that regard. So if you're tuning in and you've got a question specifically around organizational development, surveys, coaching, accountability, any of those things, feel free to throw us a question in the chat or just say, hey, because we love hanging out. We love having conversations. We love being able to provide value in any way, shape, or form to you guys if you're a follower, client, or just a fan. So without further ado, let's kick it off with a couple of CUBE conversation cards.
Yep.
Shameless plug for these, by the way.
They're beautiful.
They're really good for kicking off like huddles, one-on-ones, team meetings. When you want to get people talking and not in a cheesy way, like we want to do like a legitimate, deeper question. These work really, really well. So I don't exactly know what Megan's going to ask me. We'll see what happens.
Oh, what's the longest you could go without your phone, and what would you be doing?
The longest I could go. Me by myself or me with Bex?
By yourself.
So by myself, I feel like I could go quite a while. I'm probably 48, 72 hours, maybe more, maybe a week, if I didn't have to be on it for anything. With Rebecca, an hour. My wife will send me memes, send me all sorts of information, fun stuff, just checking in. So I probably couldn't be without it for too long with her. But yeah, by myself, I don't know, a while.
You know,
I did just get a new phone, but
oh yeah, a fancy boy.
yeah, but now I don't know. I hate being on these things.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
It depends. Is Dan going to be with Bex? Because he sends me memes too.
I do send you memes. As you said, I do send Tone the
fair.
occasional
I'd probably
meme.
go like, I mean, if I got something to do, like I'm going to be out somewhere without service, maybe 3-4 days before someone's probably concerned.
yeah.
Like I got to check in with people like, I'm alive. Don't worry about it.
God, you guys are way better people than me. I literally went on the silent retreat shameless plug for Culture Cove. And I told people, I was like, I'm not going to be on it. 3 hours in, I was like, oh my God, oh my God. But my job is to be on the internet. So, and it's going to be like that.
That's true. I am curious what most people would say. I think most people will be with you.
Yeah.
Like a couple hours, maybe
Yeah.
a day. Just been painfully aware lately of how much I'm on that damn thing. And it's a lot. And it's just, you know what I mean? If I didn't have to be on it for work, I wouldn't be on it at all. I'm curious if there's anyone watching, how long could you guys be able to go without your phone? Right? What does that look like for you? If you didn't have work pinging you all the time, or there was a different way to get in touch with you, like, I don't know, a messenger pigeon or something like that.
I was going
right?
to say smoke signals.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that too, right?
Be
We're in a
gone.
building where that's not exactly something we can physically pull off.
Well, it could. It just
Oh,
would
yeah.
be a fire hazard.
It would definitely be a fire hazard. I think
It
I
would
could go.
send some kind of message.
Oh yeah, it would. Probably the wrong one.
Eh.
I could go a few days. I'm going to stick with that. I can go a few days. Just like Tone said, we're out in the nature, you're out doing something like that. We can go a few days without your phone.
Yeah. I think if I was out in nature, I could do longer, but sitting. I have one right here.
You have one?
Yep. I like this one. This one's good. I like these ones from our Cube Conversations in particular. In your opinion, what is your best quality? Because talking nicely about yourself is extremely important.
I'm gonna wait to get that up on the screen so we can post it to the world.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In your opinion, what is your best quality? Oof. I have a couple. We've asked this question a couple of different times. I'd probably say grit. Like just kind of like the ability to, I don't know, figure things out with limited time and resources and capacity, just kind of make it work. So sometimes that turns into obstinance really quick. So guys, be aware how your strengths can immediately turn into blind spots. But I would say grit too, just that tenacity to kind of dig in, find another gear. In my opinion, that's a good quality. I've given that answer before. I don't think it's changed. What about you?
Still standing firm. I like to say that my sparkling personality is my best quality I have. However, I'm
You
also
need
very
to be more specific.
I'm just delightful, Daniel. I would say my ability to problem solve, however, that is something I really enjoy doing. Is if somebody comes to me with an issue, whatever it could be, is just figuring out the best solution for getting the problem
Yeah.
sorted, getting it done, hopefully in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So problem solving.
Yeah, I would say you got to be more specific than that.
Other than my sparkling,
Yeah,
sassy
other than your
personality.
sparkling personality.
Mhm.
Tone, while you're here and behind the camera,
Yes. I don't know. I'd probably say I figure it out personality kind of thing and like problem solving. Because example, like I was at a wedding and I forgot my audio recorder. It's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like I don't have time to go back and go grab it. So figured it out, used another audio source thing I had, wrapped around the speaker they had, because they had like the same speakers we have, like the JBL towers, just wrapped the lav mic around it.
interesting.
We were good to go.
So
Yeah.
you just put your lav mic like physically on top of the
Yeah,
output
I
for
like
the other one.
I wrapped it and then just it worked. I listened to my car on my way home. I was like,
Very interesting. I would
Can't
say that
stand
too. I would probably agree with that, Tone, is your ability to kind of like water, like you're flexible in a sense. Like we can throw a lot of different things at you. You know what I mean? And it's like you're just kind of, I'm gonna go with the flow. I'm gonna figure it out. So yeah, that's one of the better qualities. Okay, folks. So these are interesting questions. You know, what is your best quality? How long could you go without your phone? That one can be a little bit more like an icebreaker, but we ask these questions intentionally, just an FYI. And they're in this deck intentionally. And this is something like anytime you're doing some sort of an event, anytime you're gathering your team, anytime you're getting people together in that sense, ask some interesting questions like that. Ask people to really reflect and hold each other to an answer and share some of the things that make them tick, some of the things that are aspirational for them, some of the things that inform who they are and the way they make decisions. I will be releasing a video probably here soon about huddles and one-on-ones and all sorts of that good stuff, and getting way more into the mechanics than we've ever gotten before about the specifics of how those should happen. And one of the things I think is a big deal with huddles and all that other stuff is connection. If you don't know the people you're leading, if you don't know the people you're working with, and I mean know them fairly well, you don't have to be besties, but like know them well enough to like know, oh, this is the way they think, this is the way they solve problems, this is the way they communicate. They're going to want to hear it like this. We should know the people that we're working with. Super, super important. So we ask questions like this. But now that we've gotten that out of the way, I kind of want to move on to some questions that we asked as far as our team goes.
Yep.
And I might see if Tone, if you've got the capacity to throw these as she asks them up on the screen, would that be? Can we do that?
yeah,
Or should I just do that in the chat here?
I can try to. I'm not like the fastest typer with this keyboard and my
That's all right.
MacBook, but
We'll make it work. We're just figuring this out as we go. All right, Megan, you got a few questions there. We've asked some folks, people we work with, people on our team, people that are close friends or people we've worked with in the past. So we're going to start throwing these questions out there. It's going to be up on the screen so you know what topic is or what topic we're talking about. Feel free to weigh in. I know Rebecca's out there. I know a few of our LOT grads are out there watching. So drop us a comment, drop us a question. Let's go, Megan. What do we got?
Okay, let's start off with what are some common struggles you see organizations currently facing?
Usual suspects, right? I think hiring.
Mhm.
I think hiring the quality that they want. I think retention, as always, is the thing. We're seeing that level out a little bit, like pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and then post-pandemic. Those numbers have kind of leveled off a bit, but it's still rough. As far as common issues go, the big ones internally still are a thing. So communication, coaching, right now more than ever, accountability. Just to throw a couple of interesting examples from the real world out there. A lot of organizations have leadership, like director level, team leader, management, like mid-management and up, who's been in that organization probably 36 months or less. Maybe that industry 36 months or less. And I can tell you, I can't tell you much. I'm not the smartest guy around, but I can tell you a couple of things. One of those being in the first 12 months of taking on a larger leadership role, you're really just learning how to do it. Like you're not getting adept in any way. You're really just taking in that fire hose of information. So I feel like that, like the actual leadership training, getting people up to speed sooner, and then being able to connect the dots so we can hold people accountable with the hiring and retention that we've seen kind of dip and fluctuate up and down. I feel like sometimes people won't hold their team members accountable or their frontline accountable because like, I need a body, I need a person.
Mm-hmm.
I can't deal with not having an individual here, especially in critical industries. Like we've seen that. Like think about your banks, your healthcare, your schools, your places where like, man, we know the pay isn't insane. We know the work can be difficult. And if you're not communicating well, if you're not developing people, if you're not focusing on relationships and you're not trying to hold people accountable in the way that they should, right? In a healthy way, I think they're in a struggle. I think we've seen some of that. So I would say it's the hits for me. It's coaching, retention, hiring, communication. These days, though, however, on a much larger, more specific note, I think economically, times are getting harder.
Mhm.
People are making different spending decisions. And as a guy that likes to look at patterns, I feel like things are gonna get odd for a few industries. It might just get a little tight, and that's okay. But I think right now people are kind of in a sense of uncertainty. I think they need a little bit of, I don't know if the right word is development or motivation or whatever the case is, but there's kind of a cloud sometimes on certain industries. So anytime we can get in and inject some energy and inject some life and speak some life into those folks and give them some cool tools to maybe communicate and coach each other better, is a good thing.
Well, I think one of the things that we do offer at Think3D that could be something that could be a plugin is Think3DU. So this next question is actually around that topic. Is where do you see added effectiveness in the model upon which Think3DU is built?
Oh, that's a good question. Somebody teed me up for that one. Go ahead, Tone.
that was a long one. Can I
Just put why is Think3DU important?
Why is
that.
Think3DU more effective, Tone?
Yeah.
That's really good. Read that bit back to me one more time. Why is Think3D more?
Where do you see added effectiveness in the model upon which Think3DU is built?
Yeah, that sounds like Tamian wrote it. Looking right at you. That was funny. He'll get it. You guys won't get it. That was more for me. Why is Think3DU important? Why is it more effective? This is going to come across maybe slightly biased because we built it, but I think it's a little bit more in-depth, meaning we address things holistically. So you obviously know, it's right there in the name, personal professional potential. Sounds like we're beating a dead horse at this point, but it is critically important. Like when you ask me about some of the stuff that's the underlying, what are the most common underlying factors that most people are missing? I feel like all the stuff they need to fill gaps professionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing so without first focusing on or figuring out how to intertwine both the professional skill set and the training and the personal development. Because yes, I can give you this tool. I can give you this system to follow. I can give you this project. But if I'm not developing you into who you need to be the most effective at that, I'm missing out. So right off the bat, I think Think3DU, for us, we just do a really good job of incorporating personal and professional development. So we've spent time on underlying belief sets, value sets, your inner circle, your support systems, your habits, your routines, your mindset, all of the things, even getting granular. What does the first 15 minutes of your day look like? You know what I mean? Like we get into stuff like that. But then also on the professional side, we'll talk about coaching, how to do coaching peer-to-peer, which is super rough for most of us. It's not something we're super comfortable with, being able to go to a peer and provide feedback, or ask for that feedback from our leader, or being able to go to our leadership and give feedback. Like sometimes that's something that can be hard. So those two things I think make it more effective. Also, there's a bunch of data and research. This might not be the video for it, but one day we might get into it, where the learning styles, right? We've talked about that a little bit. We combine several different learning styles that I feel like are, we're talking about adult education, skill adoption, behavior modification, all those things. We know that we need to not only give people a good foundational like knowledge base, but we need to really walk through how to apply that knowledge in simulated reality. So we burn quality reps in a fairly low risk environment. That's important. Anybody watching, you can take that one away for free. And that's not an original me idea. That is just a foundational principle of performance psych and adult education and training people. Is one of the quickest ways to get really good at something is burn quality reps in a low risk environment, right? Simulate reality and get after it. And that's one of the things that I think Think3DU does well in that sense. More to come on that. I'm sure there'll be questions that pop up along the way because we asked some folks on our team. So sure, we'll talk about that. But the short and sweet of it is Think3DU is a 16-week program. We've built it, incorporates an approach to leadership that involves personal development, professional training, and unlocking your potential through making slight tweaks to your habits, your routine, your accountability in that manner. So it's kind of a cool program. Really enjoying seeing that evolve, seeing some of the folks that have gone through that. If you know someone in your organization or in your community that has gone through that, feel free to shoot them a message. Tell them I told you to do it, and they can tell you a little bit more about what it was like going through Think3DU, which is kind of cool. We got a few people trickling in. We got Rebecca Spikerbore. I'm going to shout out a few people. We got Rebecca Spikerbore from LOT. She said she could also go a few days without her phone.
Bless.
And I feel like Rebecca knows this to be true about me, because I feel like it was either you or someone else from our program sent me a Facebook DM regarding CultureCon, but it was CultureCon last year. And I think there was like 8 months between them sending that message and me getting back to them, because
that feels right.
I don't have, in my defense, I don't have Facebook notifications for Messenger on my phone or on my computer. It's kind of one of those forgotten apps that every now and again, if I go to check it, I look at, the 27, the red 27 with all the notifications that I go check out. But yeah, no, I too could go a few days. So we appreciate you, Rebecca. Keep throwing questions and comments if you're still watching. All right, Megan, what's next?
Let's see. Let's jump into some survey questions.
Okay.
So do you have any thoughts, Daniel, which I know you have lots of thoughts about surveys. We did write a whole blog post about it, and it's a multiple part series in case you're curious.
Part 2 is cooking up right now.
So any thoughts about the way surveys are being administered to employees regarding engagement?
No, I think the problem's not with the administration. I think the problem's with the follow-up. By and large, it's fairly simple. Try to figure out where your people are at, what they're reading, what they're opening, and provide that survey to them in multiple ways. Like, don't just send one email, post a link, put a postable up in the break room with a QR code. Try multiple avenues of communication. Get creative. Even just the way that you ask certain questions and the order in which you ask them can be a thing. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But as far as issues with the administration of it, I don't think so. I think what I see the most is a low response rate, which it's in and of itself is data. And that low response rate indicates people either don't care or they don't know. Either which, now it's up to us as an organization to go dive deeper into that, excuse me, and explore that. But, you got, I don't know, what's a good number? It's super subjective. That's the only different thing about some of these things is just what's right for my organization and my size, because there's playbooks and there's best practices for survey development and design as far as the order of the questions you ask, how you word them, what are you actually measuring, how you analyze it. That being said, it's the worst thing you can do is not do one. Right? Not doing any sort of survey is worse than something you throw together in Google Drive yourself. And if you ask people 5 questions, right? Do you enjoy coming to work? Has anybody given you recognition in the last 30 days? Do you have somebody at work that you can confide in? Do you feel like there's clarity in the expectations of your role? Something similar than that. Like, even throw that together. The worst thing you can do with the survey is not doing it. What was that part 2 to that question? I feel like there's second part.
2.
So
follow up.
What was the first part again?
So one thing, Any thoughts about ways surveys are being administered to employees regarding engagement? That's all that one was.
Find multiple ways to do it. I would say, like I said, meet people where they're at with what they're reading, what they're engaging in. The last thing that I would say is push it and make sure that's an expectation that's clearly communicated. Not only that we need to do it, but why. That's something I'll probably get into maybe a little bit later. But managers, leaders, if you are dragging your feet and moaning and groaning about having to do a survey, and that's the way you convey that message to your team, no wonder they're not going to do it. We have 500 people. Why aren't they taking the survey? Well, most of our frontline management thinks the survey is a waste of time, and they communicate it to their team like it's a waste of time. That's a problem. That explains your 42% response rate, right? So I'd say it's less about the how and more about the activities that go around it.
Okay.
Part 2.
So kind of a follow-up really to that. So in your opinion, kind of what is the best kind of survey questions to include in an employee engagement survey? Like what are some tips and tricks you might have for that to actually get people to engage with the survey?
Yep. So disclaimer, big disclaimer. I did go to college. I snuck out with a few degrees. It wasn't easy. It took me extra time. I did some victory laps. So before anyone starts going off, like I've done a fair bit of design and research in as far as survey design, both qualitative and quantitative stuff, dealing with ethnographic groups, ethnographic research, some of that other stuff into subcultures and subcommunities. So I've done some nerdy stuff with data. This is not the environment for that, but we'll get into that maybe. One of the things that I would say as far as questions go, really figuring out what it is that we're measuring as far as an outcome. So the questions that you ask should be designed to generate a specific outcome. And you should be mindful of the language, excuse me, because the language isn't just about what it means from a definitional sense. It's about what are you communicating when you have these questions worded the way that you do. Some of the questions that I really like that I think are indicative of an organization's health would be things like trust and safety. Now, granted, there's another layer to that. You're going to have to go back and do some hand-to-hand work, get in deep with people, have some one-on-ones, but I feel like trust and safety is important. Those questions would be things like, do you feel comfortable or do you feel empowered to own a mistake or an error and communicate to either a peer or leadership about that? That's a little wordy, but like the idea is we're wanting to measure how safe and comfortable people feel taking ownership and accountability of things when it doesn't go right. One of the biggest things that frustrates teams, leaders, and slows people down is I don't want to tell my leadership because I don't want them to overreact. So again, leaders, if you continually find yourself in a situation where people are not telling you things until the last minute, might be a time to look at how we're developing trust and safety on the team. It might be a time to look at how we're reacting to things. I tell you the same thing at home. If you have a family and you're raising them and also it always seems like you're finding out things after they happened or at the last minute, I'd do some deeper work on how I'm reacting to certain things. Not always the case, but it's a good place to start. And the number one thing that we can control is ourselves. So I look at that. I'm big on trust and safety questions. I'm also big on alignment and clarity. So do you feel like you're aligned with your role? Not just the mission, vision, values of the work, but like, do you actually, does this work support some of your best attributes? So when I say alignment, it's like, do you enjoy the work? Do you find purpose in it? Do you find it fulfilling? I want to make sure that's happening. And I'm so sorry, folks. I'm kind of struggling through some mental fog here. Trust and safety, alignment. Oh, I think I said clarity. Yep. Clarity of expectation, clarity of communication. That's another big one that I like. How would you rate the effective communication in your organization? And put context to that. Some of my favorite questions are to juxtapose individual. So do a self-reflective question, like a self-analysis, and then do a team level or like your immediate scope, the people you interface with day to day. And then also an organizational assessment. Now, keep in mind, I think it's anybody would tell you if they've read Arbinger Institute or Jim Collins or looked at anything that Gallup puts out, we know for a fact that it's going to be about a 20 to 30% differential. If I rate me an 8 out of 10 on a skill set, I'm going to rate the organization 5 to 6. And that's just kind of a human thing we tend to do. So by and large, if you're a leader, just be prepared to see that. It also makes for a great talking point, and it also makes for a great way to, over the course of time, train behaviors. Meaning, hey, team, when we send you this survey, we want you to think about it in this way because this is what we're specifically trying to measure. So we get really clear on what it is we're actually asking them to reflect on, because sometimes we're left up to a little bit of interpretation, and that can be where that disconnect you're seeing. I think it's in the 70s or 80% now. Like the disconnect between management and frontline as far as what their perception of reality is on the front line. So that can help build that back. Again, trust and safety, clarity and alignment. Those are my big ones. Also safety, not only meaning physically, but that too. I would ask people, especially if you're in any type of working environment that involves machinery, equipment, people who are working with their hands, building stuff. We want to make sure that people feel extraordinarily safe coming to work and operating at a high level, doing that in addition to the psychological, emotional, mental safety that comes with good communication.
Sweet. Because the second part of that was like what kind of questions to include to actually get good information and data from.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people like to do surveys and then they get this information and it's very arbitrary. It's like, okay, cool. Like we have this.
Yep.
It points to nothing. It leads to nothing. But like, cool. I'm glad we asked.
Yep. So this will be about where getting specific with your language can help. There's a few companies in there. Like, I mean, you got your Qualtrics, you got your, geez, we just looked at one, Leadership IQ, Work Tango to some. I think you can do some of the stuff through Gallup. You can do the Gallup 12, which will give you like a 12-point, like an assessment. There's a lot of cool things, right? And so a lot of folks, like there's a lot of ways that you can measure some of these things. Some of them will give you specific questions or the ability to contextualize things to your team, meaning like maybe we use a specific term to describe middle management roles, or maybe there's a specific role that somebody else wouldn't have. I think of our friends, they're clients of ours. I think of our friends at Horizon Health. They've got regional managers and site coordinators, and they've got a few other different roles, and it's ultra specific to them. So when we start talking about layers of leadership, something I like to encourage people to do is get specific, because a lot of times when we think of leadership, especially if you're on the front line, how connected do you feel of leadership? Well, I think of the CEO or the COO or the director of ops that I don't see but once every 6 months. And I don't have a super strong relationship with them. So what we want to ask is, hey, how connected do you feel to senior leadership at the top? How connected do you feel to your direct person that you roll up to? So your direct leader. And how connected do you feel like to the rest of the organization, different departments, different people? That can be one way. So just to get specific with that, right? Adding in layers of specificity, I think is a great tool. The other thing is scale up or down your actual measures based on how precise you want to be. A 5-point Likert type is going to give you a little bit more precision as far as figuring out how people are distributed along disagree, strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. A 7-point is going to give you even more. And a 10-point, whether that's a rating system or you're actually doing a Likert type, and there's all these different options, that can get into a lot of different data points. One thing I would say is figure out how to scale it up and down based on what you're actually trying to measure and how much you're going to do with it. I like to do a 5-point, if not higher, for most things. Like we would talk about a engagement score, right? Or a net, like an internal, like an ENPS or an INPS score, which is a net promoter score. So if you've ever gotten that email after you buy like a pair of boots, and it's like, how likely are you to recommend Zappos to a friend or family member to buy shoes? And you're like, oh, 6 out of 7, very likely to do so, or 4 out of 5, very likely to do so. That's a net promoter score. And we ask that same question at work sometimes. And if you just give people 3 options, you don't necessarily get extra insight into how they're distributed. You get yes, maybe, no. Yeah. And that sometimes can be limiting, because what I feel like a lot of leaders do is they look at data and there's not a lot of nuance to it, right? There's not a lot of, maybe I'm contextualizing what happened this year, or I'm nuanced in the sense that, yeah, we've got this distribution across 5 points or 7 points, but the majority of them fall into, maybe they're not quite what I would call actively disengaged, but they're in that neutral ground. They're on the fence. So as we can spread that out a little bit more. So I like Likert types. I like rating scales. I like doing stuff that's, again, smaller amount of questions, but over a more frequent time period. So every 90 days, having a 5 to 7 question survey, and then asking people to rate things. 1 to 10 ratings can be unbelievably helpful. It's super simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it. You know what I mean? Even just asking people to rate how they feel about the attitudes, relationships, things like that. That's something we do. We go through every major pillar: culture, communication, attitudes, coaching, effectiveness. Did I say relationships? Quality, the quality and depth of relationships. How would you rate that? And that's a good measure, because that's extremely quantifiable. If most of my people are saying it's a 6.8 out of 10, awesome. I know next year when I go to measure that, and I'm at a 7.6 out of 10, I've moved that needle up.
Perfect. So with the positive, there's always the negative. So what kind of things and questions would you leave out of a survey around employee engagement? What doesn't make sense to me there?
This is going to be super subjective, and I hate answers like that, and I'm sure the audience does too, so I'll try to get through this as quick as possible. What kind of questions would you leave out for a survey? I would say ones that aren't exactly clear or specific. So things that could potentially lead people to kind of absolutes, always, nevers, don't include those. Everyone's nobodies. We want people to be precise. We want people to be specific. Something lately that I've seen too is this is less about what to leave out and again, folks, big asterisks here. This is just my opinion, and having done and seen quite a few surveys over the years. We actually just had a conversation about this, Megan, about comp and bennies. So comp and benefits, I am largely torn on this issue because I think it's unbelievably important to discuss how people feel with their compensation and benefits packages. Is it actually sustainable for them? Like, this is a real issue, folks. It's 2024. Healthcare is stupid freaking expensive. You know what I mean? And we're not matching that with pay increases or salaries because most of our businesses are struggling for margins. That's just the reality of what it is. So it's not exactly fun, right? But we have to have that conversation at some point, and we have to let them know we're moving the needle on it. Here's my take on why I wouldn't include comp and bennies on it. Because if you're not intentional about how that's worded and where it's ordered in the survey, if you're trying to get a really clear idea of what your engagement score actually looks like, I would do a separate analysis of comp and bennies. I would, because if you throw that in at the beginning of your survey, it might have a negative impact across the rest of your data. And that's something too, if you do it, you can just take it into account, right? And understand, hey, we asked that question right at the beginning, and you can find some correlative stuff in there. You can do a regression and see, like, there's a statistical significance and a relationship between people who said, I'm extremely dissatisfied with my pay and I'm extraordinarily disengaged.
Yep.
And that's kind of a no-brainer. We would, no doubt, right? So why wouldn't we include that? Because I would want to start focusing on some things with a little bit more precision. And I wouldn't want the fact that our compensation and benefits packages might have some gaps get in the way of some of the other opportunities. And so when I say it makes the data cloudy, it can be hard to maybe pinpoint that there was a leadership change, right? Or there was a big process change, or any of our friends who are in community support or in some more of like the behavioral health side of things and services and support for individuals who need that. You know that billing changed a couple years ago. That was a big process change for everybody. And the state was just like, oh, billing changes. Okay, have fun.
Hope
And
you like
that,
it.
and a lot of people got beat up on their engagement surveys that year because the state just said, hey, we got a new process. And that's okay. Stuff like that happens. But that's an example of what I mean. It's going to make the data cloudy. They're going to say, what did we do wrong? We've been trying all these things. And like, you didn't. The state changed the billing stuff, and you've had people running around trying to fix problems at like we're building new stuff as we're using it. So like, no wonder, you know what I mean? It gets a little stressful. So I would just say, be mindful of the order in which you ask questions and be mindful of what it is that you're measuring specifically. If you want to have a thing about compensation and benefits, I'm a big fan of actually doing a more robust and more thorough compensation and benefits analysis. Go through, carve out intentional time to do that. That one is important enough to give it its own, energy, effort, and resources because it's critical. I would say that's probably one of the number one deciding factors outside of your direct manager, right? That's the other thing is your direct manager has the most influence on your engagement and your experience at work. So I feel like those are things that I would include. Compensation and benefits is important as well. It's really going to taint that perspective, right? As it should, in my opinion, to a degree. But I would just be mindful of where you put that in there. And again, never stay away from hyperbolic stuff or absolutes, always, nevers, things like that. Yes or no questions don't give us much data. True or false questions don't give us much data unless you're just measuring for a compliance thing. Unless you need to check off that this person took this survey or took this course or has this certification, I wouldn't put a yes or no or a true false. Like, it's just
This makes sense.
not a lot of data we get from it.
Okay. So getting out of surveys for a hot minute, if there is one thing that you could get every direct supervisor to do or start doing, what would it be?
Oh man. Everyone to start doing?
Everyone.
I'm gonna go a little bit deeper, more on the personal side of it for a little bit. I think people need to do deep self work. What I mean by that is the way you talk to yourself, the way you handle yourself, the relationship you have with you. And I don't mean who you are on Tuesday at 9 a.m. on a call in front of everybody. I can do my thing. Hey, everybody, it's Dan. Yeah, we're leading the call, doing the thing. I mean, who's the person the night before a big presentation at midnight? How do you talk to yourself in that sense? So I would say deep personal reflection and deep work on yourself, specifically in the sense of confidence, self-talk, discipline, emotional health, mental health. Leading people's no easy feat. Take it from somebody who did it poorly for a number of years, right? Like I tell people all the time, we're not experts, we're not gurus. I'm not smarter than you are. In fact, probably quite the opposite. I just made more mistakes and had more repetition. And I've had really good mentors, really good trainers, really good leaders, really good experiences. It's a difficult thing to master. So I'd say really deep personal self-work. If I could just snap my fingers and make everybody do that. Outside of that, I'd start making everybody have consistent huddles, consistent one-on-ones. You need to be in briefing and debriefing from as many things as you possibly can. You do not save any time by not having a quick 5 to 10 minute discussion about it. So do a huddle as often as you can pre-shift. Maybe you bookend the week. Maybe you do twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, whatever the case is. It just gives us an opportunity to connect with people, share some of those updates. A lot of leaders wonder why maybe they feel like they're not effective when they're giving feedback, but they're not creating specific time for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's say I'm doing a procedure and I've got a team. Let's say we're doing imaging, right? So we're running an MRI for a patient in a healthcare system, and me and my team, I'm the team lead that does this, and we knock it out of the park. There's several complications, the nature of the patient's injury, some pre-existing medical conditions, some things that we have to be mindful of that change up the normal process. We have to figure it out as we go on our feet, and we do that really well. So like, people are jiving, people are making calls. Hey, I'm going to push this for 30, not 60, because all that complicated stuff, right? All the things that happen with those professionals in that environment. And they'll have those really good things happen. And then they'll go back and they'll wonder to themselves, man, I wish we could do that every single time. Why don't they do that every single time? But they don't talk about it. They don't bring it back to the group. They don't the next morning huddle up and say, hey, everybody, so yesterday, this specific case, this specific procedure, you guys knocked it out of the park. That was an A+. Let's break down what went well, what happened, what do we need to do in order to recreate that every single time, and get into some game film. Honestly, huddles. Do more of a huddle. Be more be more reflective on certain things, good, bad, and ugly. I'd say create an environment of coaching and feedback through huddles and TBs or one-on-ones. So those two things for me: self-work and touch bases. Self-discovery, Rebecca says. Thank you, Rebecca. I would absolutely agree. She's done a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What else we got going on?
So there's a follow-up to that.
Oh no, is it the inverse?
It's the inverse. So what is one thing that every direct supervisor should stop, all caps, doing? What would it be?
Oh, I kind of love and hate questions like this, because it's like, it's so subjective, and I hate it depends answers. I really do.
You do, and I ask you a lot of them.
You ask me a lot of questions, and it depends, and I hate it depends answers. I would like a clearer or more direct answer. That being said, I think if I could have people stop doing something, the silence is unbearable, isn't it?
It's painful.
I don't know. Maybe this is just because where I'm at and what the conversations I've had this week are. I would explore stop assuming negative intent. How do we do that? How do we deploy positive intent in a way that's realistic? Stop assuming negative intent. And I would say just understand that allows us to understand the relationship that we occupy as team leaders, or as people that are in what we would consider like a frontline management or a mid-level management, where we're leading people on the front line, but there's another layer of leadership above us that does things at the strategic level. You can get that mothership effect, right? Or that corporate effect. We've talked about it because we've seen it, where it's like, oh, you don't know because you're from corporate. You don't know because you're from admin. Admin doesn't care. Corporate doesn't care. HQ doesn't care. And sometimes as a leader, when I say assuming negative intent, it can be really easy to think that we're alone. It's on an island. It's us against the world. It's us against the rest of the organization. And one of the things that I would say is I would just say stop assuming that negative intent. It's going to make life a whole lot easier. Now, I'm going to add a caveat to this. Assuming positive intent does not mean you are a doormat. It does not mean you are passive. It does not mean that you don't call things out when you see it. It doesn't mean you don't approach people with accountability and appropriate challenge. What it does mean is we don't automatically jump to the fact that there's some nefarious plot to truly make our lives miserable. Because the reality of it is, and if you think about it, you'd have to say, this team member comes in at 7 a.m. every single day and does or doesn't do this specific thing with the sole intention of frustrating me and making my day more difficult. Be that as it may, I really struggle to see how walking around with that mindset or that assumption can make you a more effective person or a more effective leader. And as leaders, our attitude, our energy bleeds out. I've done it. I've seen it. I come in and I'm stressed out. We've seen it. Tamian, he's stressed out. We got a lot of big projects going on. The team gets stressed out when you're stressed out. So that would be one thing. If I could make everybody immediately stop doing that, the beauty of that is I can't, and that's why I have a job.
Yeah, well, that's what you're here for.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle. I mean, and also this isn't to say, big caveat on here, folks. Again, if you're watching this live or catch the replay, this is not coming from a position of we do this every time perfectly either. This is just something that I know is super important and have to work on myself. So interesting caveat there. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate that.
Just cheerleading you through.
She's awesome. She is a massive cheerleader.
Well, no, I was even thinking when we were talking about surveys and you're talking about like you rate yourself higher and then the business lower. Like we
100%.
literally just did that for our own company retreat. And the irony of that, like
Super
we
funny,
do this and
'cause-
we all did that as employees.
So when Tamian and I
did
were,
that.
so when Tamian showed me the survey that we just took at our retreat, I told him, I was like, you need to expect a 30% difference.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's an outward versus inward mindset kind of thing. We always perceive ourselves to be better, or I would say more altruistic than maybe a whole or like some sort of a collective. It's always me versus the collective. Yeah, me as an individual, I'm going to be more virtuous and maybe more altruistic. I'm going to be more well-intended because I have access to my internal monologue. I don't have access to anybody else's. So it's an assumption we make, but it's kind of funny. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. People sometimes say like, oh, you guys must be perfect. It's not perfect working over here. In fact, if anything, it's harder because we put everything under a microscope.
Yeah, we very much analyze ourselves aggressively.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about direct supervisors and all that. And I do
Yeah.
think like as in leadership roles, you kind of get hit on the most and kind of get beat down because you're trying to guide people. So this is one is how can employees better serve their supervisors to benefit all parties involved? So can an employee basically support and work with their supervisor more appropriately?
It's funny because I'm going to say stop assuming negative intent.
Full circle.
Full circle there. I would argue that. So the question was, how can employees better serve? And I don't know if I like the way that's worded. Just I don't know who asked that. That being said, I think a big part of being a leader is being a servant, and so it's my job as a leader to empower you, the team member who's first in the door, first on the ground, first whatever, to be able to do that as effectively as you can. Should I be competent enough to be able to do that alongside with you? 100%. But I do truly feel like the one of the key roles that a leader can do is be a servant and be a supporter of their team. They're also the one that has the weight of decision making on their shoulders, and so that's something that you have to take into consideration with that. I'd make a change to thinking about that and just power dynamics, things like that. I am a strong believer in the fact that we don't work for people. We work for ourselves. We are employed by people. So if you want to get into the nuances of that, excuse me, please do, because that's a super interesting conversation I'd be happy to have. What can we do though better support our leadership? I would say one, and I kind of joked about bringing the assuming positive intent, but the reality is, a lot of us, when our leaders ask us to do something or your leader asks you to check in on a project, we will immediately jump to kind of a defensive posture or kind of a defensive place. Like, where are we at on this project? Well, no, who's asking? I never got a deadline. Who's asking? Why are you asking? Is it off track? Did the client say something? And instead of just being like, I haven't started it yet. It's in my queue. I'll start it later this week. Do you need a specific date? Right? And just being like a little bit more laid back with some of that stuff. Guilty of it myself too. Like I said, folks, if I could snap my fingers and make that happen, I would just make sure we're super clear all the time. The other thing that I really like to challenge people with, so one, right off the bat, just consider how you're walking around with your intent. Malintent is toxic, and I mean that in the most literal sense of the word. So don't assume malintent. Don't assume negative intent. Walk around with a filter that's mostly focused on positive to neutral. Curiosity, like I said, curiosity and clarity. I don't believe in silver bullets. I've said this before when it comes to organizational stuff, because there's no such thing that just works every single time. It's not how people work. But curiosity and clarity get you damn near halfway there. Yeah. Like they really get you about halfway there. So I'd say start with those two things. The next thing that I would do is just do some self-reflection on how easy am I to lead? I mean, let's be honest, folks. If you're constantly moving the goalposts, if you're constantly not being forthright, if you're constantly not wanting to participate in something and expecting that the culture or the environment or the decision-making or the performance is based solely on the actions of other people and not you, you're more than likely part of the problem. I tell people all the time, like if you date 10 people in 10 years and every single one of your exes is toxic, who's the only common denominator? Mm-hmm. What's more likely? That that individual has an issue, maybe their attitude, maybe their approach to relationships, or did they really run into 10 people who all have the same problem? Does that make sense? So it's not a popular answer, but I feel like that is just like checking in on how easy could you, how coachable am I being? Am I open to coaching? Am I open to feedback? Am I seeking some of those things? That would make, and again, this is assuming that you've got a good or amicable relationship with your leader. This is assuming that your leader is somebody who you look up to and respect and feel like they can do the job accordingly. If it's not, what I would encourage you to do is find a modicum of empathy and perspective within your heart and strive to find the best intentions for that person and figure out how to navigate it successfully to create the best possible outcome you can for that relationship. So I just be as coachable as you can. Be open to feedback. Also, working towards candor with your leader in that sense allows you the position to give them feedback. So people don't always realize is like when you get into a position with a leader where you know each other well, you have a good trusting relationship, and you're candid with each other, you can give and receive feedback back and forth, which is helpful because not a lot of us, sometimes if we're on a team, don't feel like we have a voice. I'm just a worker bee. I'm just this person. I don't have a voice. And it's like, nope, you have a voice. Use it. Build that relationship up. So that's a hard one to answer. Those are my takes on it, though. Stop assuming negative intent. Choose curiosity and clarity over suspicion, and consider how you are being more or less coachable or open to feedback.
Beautiful. We'll jump down to this one. So, how can we establish multiple transparent communication channels with upper management to ensure consistent alignment on current information and processes? Good luck, Tom, in writing all that.
Did you copy and paste? No, he's getting smarter. See, he's figuring it out.
Nice.
Part of the
Look at
Think
you,
3D
Tone.
way. Figure it out. I would say, yeah, it's funny. I said figure it out as far as the Think 3D way. I think that's something you need to sit down and do. Let's talk about what those actual priorities are. I like this question. I don't necessarily like how it's worded. It's
Wordy.
detailed, but it's not at the same time. So
Mhm.
like, again, a communication channel is just a thing. That just means we have a dialogue. It either works or it doesn't. As far as the transparency of it goes, I think about like, can other people read it? Can other people see it or not? Or can it just be honest? More so to this, I'll add refinement on it. When I read this, I think about, there goes my device.
Gone.
When I read that or hear that, I think about how can we just get a little bit more clarity and alignment. So again, folks, it's not complex. It's not rocket science stuff. It's just consistency for the fundamentals. If you don't feel like you can be transparent or honest, back to what I said earlier, where it's the point of it is, can I ask you a question without there being an assumption of you're not doing something correct? Do you feel comfortable bringing problems to me right away? Do we have just open and genuine accountability on stuff? Well, you didn't do this. Well, you didn't do this either. Can we have a conversation about the reality of that? And I would always just try to figure out what's at the end of the day, what does this communication need to accomplish? Is it effective? If it's less than effective, we need to assess those things early and often. So let's start by having some really honest conversations. What's working, what's not. Ego should be removed from that. I know it's really difficult for us, especially when there's power dynamics as far as relationships and positions go. But one of the things that I feel like is, hey man, doesn't have to be my idea. It just needs to be the best idea, right? So what works? If you operate on that principle, I feel like you have a little bit better foundation. Otherwise, if you don't feel like you're being heard or you don't feel like that, ask. Have an honest conversation. And again, we're going to circle back to the positive intent thing. Have that question with like a genuine curiosity. Hey, I don't feel like we have a good system for me to give feedback vertically. Is there some sort of a meeting or a form or something like, can we get a feedback loop to where I feel like I'm heard on a consistent basis? Don't be afraid to ask. As far as multiple goes, I mean, that kind of depends on what you're doing. Right? Keeping your ducks in a row, keeping your touch bases with people. I wouldn't be afraid to have it daily. I wouldn't be, if you're really moving and grooving and you're doing a lot of projects, like we've talked about that before, where it's like we touch base every day. Brett and I touch base every day. There's enough moving parts and it doesn't look the same every single day.
No.
I used to, when I had the thinker team all to myself directly, it was every day. Sometimes twice a day for a few folks. You know what I mean? And it was every day. And so like over communicating is a thing, especially when it becomes ineffective. But I would also say, if you're not having those frequent touch bases, have them as frequently as you need to. You should be focusing on building connection. You should be focusing on getting clarity, and you should be focusing on collaboration, whether that's troubleshooting, project management, ideation, any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because a lot of people are very fearful of talking to people about problems. They just like to sit with it and be like, well, I'll just deal with it. I'll just take all this on. And then they get burnt out. And it's like, well, if you would have just communicated that you weren't feeling good about something, you weren't doing whatever, perhaps there is a chance that it could have been solved earlier and you wouldn't feel like jumping off a cliff.
100%. And just ask someone. Ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask for help. I don't know how to do this. Ask for help. Hey, I bit off more than I can chew. I did that with Tamian with this stupid book I've been writing. It's going to be awesome. If you're watching at home, it's going to be great. But I took on a project. I bit off way more than I can chew. And I had to go to him and be like, hey, I told you this to be done by August 1. It's like Jan 1, right? It's going to be a long time. So the honesty to be able to do that, I think, is important. As far as the how, like specifics, use multiple forms of communication. Like multiple forms and understand what they're for. I don't know if we don't have the way to pull stuff up and put it on the screen. When we do this again next month, we'll have a little bit more graphics prepared. But one of the things we've done is actually built a table of what sort of communication channel should you use, why, and when. And it's not an end all be all. It's not it's not something that I would even encourage you. Don't use ours. Take the idea and build your own. What type of information is reserved for texts and to whom? Are we in a group message? Are we one-to-one? Are we doing something casual? Do I just need to give you a quick update? Maybe it's like this. I'm on camera or I'm doing a training or a session and someone needs to give me a super vital piece of information and they know if my computer's going off, it's not going to work. Shoot me a quick text, right? I can look at that. I can see it. Awesome. We'll put that down. Now I've got that information. Everyone hates a group chat channel, whether that's Slack or Teams. But that being said, some of those times are the best ways that you can start to record conversations and having multiple ones. We've got a plethora of them, all for different purposes. Some of them use links to shared files, shared resources, so you can have clarity on those projects. If you're not using some sort of a to-do list or a Kanban board, you're making a mistake. So the transparency says your planner or your to-do list, if you don't feel like there's transparency between you and leadership on deadlines, projects, all sorts of different things, put all of the shit you're working on in a shared space. Use a planner. And I say planner, the app from Microsoft, Planner, or Asana or Trello or a Google Doc or a Google Drive or something in SharePoint. But if you feel like there's not that clarity, so you're getting maybe you're getting requests where you're like, man, 15 people are asking me to do shit. Marketing deals with this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I need an asset. I need an evergreen asset, right? I need some flat assets for a post, like whatever, name the thing. You're always getting asked for stuff.
Yeah.
Put all that stuff you're using in a shared space. Like if you feel like there's people that are asking you too much, be like, hey, my to-do list is here. My priority items are here. You add this thing in here. Happy to do it. Although just understand it's going to kick this back. How would you like me to reprioritize this? Because I want to make sure you have what you need because we know that needs change, right?
Yeah.
So open and honest communication, build a relationship first, make sure you can trust that person. It's easier to own mistakes. It's easier to move forward when you have trust. And then finally get that stuff shared somewhere so we can both be working in real time. It's documented and embrace multiple tools of communication. Don't just have a million email threads going on. Sometimes it's easy to just pick up the damn phone and call somebody. Rant over. Next question.
Soapbox, step down. So we're going to jump into mental health related questions.
Okay. Mental health warning. We're talking about mental health, folks. So if you're on the channel and you aren't interested in hearing about conversations that may have to do with mental health, emotional health, sometimes some more, I would say maybe difficult or sensitive topics, now is your chance to go ahead and tune out.
Zone out. So mental health continues to be a big topic of discussion.
Yep.
How can organizations best support employees in that realm, more in terms of the root cause versus the symptoms?
Ooh. This is another one that I struggle to answer objectively because this is very much it depends. What can organizations do to better support mental health as far as the root cause? Not just the symptom. Is that the question, right?
Yeah. So talking less about like mental health time off. So having that kind of as part of your PTO package, things of that nature. More talking about kind of what can cause like negative side effects, deadlines being missed, things of that nature. So those accountability things. So what we were talking about with the open communication and so forth might be an answer. But so somebody misses a deadline, it was due to the fact that they had this problem happen in their life and it spiraled down to here. How do we work through that as a company, as a leader, to get that person coached back up to feeling like, okay, I'm not this miserable blob of a human, because Lord knows they're now doom spiraling in their brain.
Yeah. I love the way you word things, Megan. We got to get her back on more of this stuff. I would say it's going to start with a couple of different things. One, there's a whole lot of pre-work you have to do. So you can't just go ahead and flip on a switch and then now we're changing all these things. We've established all these things. This needs to be something that you need to be considerate of how we're doing this ahead of time. So what are we doing before the ball gets dropped? How are we, what's our onboarding look like? What's our culture look like as far as the way we make decisions? Excuse me. The way that I talk about culture too, folks, just so you know, and the way that we talk about it at Think 3D, culture isn't your mission, vision, values. Culture isn't your branding. Culture isn't your slogan. Culture isn't having a massive poster with your Think 3D way on it, even though we do have those. They're kind of cool. Those are fun things.
It's not the hang in there cat.
Hang in there cat. What's the one they call it? Like,
there's so many of them.
Flexibility. And it's got the guy on like the two canoes. And I'm like, it's an unsustainable position. He can't hold that. Anyways, no, those aren't culture. Culture is the aggregate or the sum of the choices you make every day. I mean it. Like, it's as simple as that. It's unbelievably complex at its core, but reality is it's the choices you make every single day. How am I choosing to respond to this person? How am I choosing to prioritize this work? How am I choosing to communicate this clearly or not? How am I choosing to practice and get repetition at what I do so I'm a freaking professional at it? So I'm good at it. There it is. Be a pro, right?
I was
There
gonna
it is
say,
in
be
the
a
thing.
pro, be a pro.
But
Where's
like,
our banner?
how are we developing that elite like sense of excellence and pursuit of excellence in what we do? That's your culture. So I think it starts with that. I think it starts with having conversations with people ahead of time, just like you would go into any sort of engagement. You go take on a new martial art. Let's say we want to go learn Taekwondo, right? And we go to Taekwondo, they're going to give you a safety brief right at the beginning of it. If this happens, you feel this, you feel this, you feel this, you stop, you do this, you do whatever the case is. Right. Same thing. You'll learn like jujitsu or go to a wrestling gym, right? Start taking up wrestling. And you'll learn really quick, just like how to understand, like we brief people when they go in on what's safe behavior and what's not. So as an organization, start having those conversations ahead of time. Proactively have conversations about what it looks like, what it doesn't, what it means to you, right? And what resources are available that people can go activate if they do ever need to press the button. I had to take a month off. I don't know if a lot of people know that. Like, we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to mental health and taking time off for yourself. I took a month off, basically to do a massive blitz through therapy, did some physical training, got some health things figured out, both physically and mentally. And it was incredible. It was really difficult. I'm not good at taking time off, but if I hadn't taken that time off, I'd be having a really bad time right now. And so, one, be proactive. Have conversations before incidents happen. Remember, we want to create an environment, not manage events. I want to create an environment, not manage events. I shouldn't be managing incidences where people are dropping the ball, whether they're going through a divorce or relationship change, the loss of a family member, a loved one, a friend, whatever that is. Those are real life things that happen. And I don't care how, we've all seen it. Well, I know for a fact we've seen it, but like, it doesn't matter how, when you go through a divorce, it doesn't matter how positive that change is, it impacts your work.
Mm-hmm.
And so having conversations before people go through life, things like that, and just letting them know, hey, here's how we handle things here. And then you're going to have to do the hard work later on of actually supporting people in the ways in which you told them you would. So there's that. Second thing is accountability and trust are really double-edged swords. They're very difficult because we want to give people grace and leniency, especially when they're experiencing things. But at the same time, if you are not getting better over the course of time, when people are giving you repeated chances, or you are finding yourself in the same position, the same frustrations, the same emotional health struggles, the same things, something is not working. If you've been to 4 organizations, 3 organizations, 5 organizations, whatever the case is, anything more than 2, right? Because that's 50-50, takes it beyond 50-50. But if you've been to multiple organizations and you seem to run into the same issue, the burnout, the lack of engagement, the whatever the case is, the depression, the distractibility, the things like that, you need to do some reflective work on your process. So I would say as an employer, help people focus on their process. I want you to embrace a process. I want you to stick to it. I do not need perfection. I understand some things might need to be scaled up or down depending on your capacity and your ability. But you have to have a process. That was something Vonnie and Tamian, when I was really, really going through some stuff many years ago, brand new out of corporate world, quit my job, was just a young buck. Immediately, my entire personal life kind of fell apart around me. I had a little bit to do with that as well. I'm not gonna say I didn't have anything to do with that. So I was kind of in a bad way, and my mental health wasn't great. And one of the best things that they could have done is really hold me to a process. You say this, you say you want this, you say you want it to be like this. Okay, go do something about it, and then check in with it. Make sure you hold that person to it. It's not always going to be, we want to give people a soft place to land, but that's not going to mean they're not going to fall. That's the best way I can put it. Like, create an environment that gives people a soft place to land. You get to screw some stuff up. But again, if it's high frequency or high impact, we got to have a conversation about what that looks like, because you need to do something different. I trust you. I value you. I do not trust your emotional state right now. I don't trust your mental capacity right now because you've got all these other things going on. Always trust you. What I need you to do is figure out a way to get to regulate. So 1, be proactive. Create an environment that welcomes openness, candor, helps people solve problems, right? With some of those things. We don't need to solve those personal problems for them, but we just need to know we should create a stable enough and a safe enough environment to where if it is stormy outside and they leave our 4 walls and they go back to their personal life and it's chaotic, they come back here and they're squared away. And they at least know what's expected of them. And they at least know there's people that care, and there's people that they're going to check in that made sure, hey, did you go to group? Hey, did you go to therapy? Hey, did you go, whatever the thing is, right? Like, we've all been through people. Like, I've had multiple good friends who've come back and called me up after years and been like, hey, I need a place to crash. I get back on my feet, made some bad decisions, all that stuff. And the reality is sometimes you have to hold somebody's feet to the fire and be like, hey, you need to figure this out. And it's not always easy, but it's something I would say is unbelievably valuable. Speaking of, there's Bex. So yeah, those are my answers. I know it's a long-winded answer, folks. To wrap it up, be proactive, have those conversations ahead of time. Here's what we want you to do. Here's what we want you to ask. Here's what we expect of you. Should you find yourself in the middle of going through something significant? Also remind people, trust is like a parachute. Everyone wants to say they have it, but no one wants to use it because it means that something has gone horribly wrong. So understand that deploying trust and grace are oftentimes messy, oftentimes feels chaotic. So if we're proactive enough about it, we create an environment where we're consistently checking on each other. We're holding each other to a better, not best. Progress is the goal. Then when stuff does happen, if we stick to that process, if we lean into our relationships, we lean into the trust, we should get through those things okay. Not a guarantee, but you have at least a better foundation. So
Well, and I think it's important for people to remember too. So it's like you're going through something that's very personal, but you carry that with you at work.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like you going through your work day and all of that. And it's vice versa. Like the stuff you go through at work, you bring home with you and like it goes
Preach.
back and forth. So being
Preach.
accountable at work and having your work
So very
actually
true.
care about you as a person is
Mhm.
extremely valuable, and showing your employees you care, that's going to help them want to stay with you.
Yep.
From my personal opinion and what I personally have been through, like working here has exponentially helped me to actually be able to focus back on me versus like the work where I could just be like, well, I'll just work really, really hard and just do all these activities and totally not embrace any of my issues because it's just easier to do that.
Mhm.
So I think people sometimes view mental health as like an independent thought out of work.
Nope, it's not.
But it's like that brain still goes to work. Like you're still
There's
doing it there.
There's 0% chance. There's 0% chance. I will. This is my hill.
This is your hill
This
you're
is
gonna
my
die on?
this is my hill to
Ooh,
die
I
on.
like it.
There is 0% chance you can look at me in the eyes and tell me with a straight face and all honesty that you can spend 65% of your waking hours somewhere and completely compartmentalize that from the rest of your life and tell me it doesn't affect things one way or the other. Like, sorry if I'm glaring at you guys watching from home, but like the reality is you can't. I just don't think it's possible. I think you have to admit that the reality is, yes, work is not just something, or mental health is not just something that's related to your issues. And even then, sometimes people can be ticking time bombs. Like we don't know some of the stuff people are dealing with. I always tell people, try to treat every human being as if they have a handle with care sticker attached. Not assuming that they're fragile, right? Not assuming there's fragile items in case, but we want to handle with care because we don't exactly know. Treat every single person as if they have a handle with care sticker, right? Be intentional, be kind, be honest, be forthright, but care about the way in which you send people home and set the tone when they come back to work, because it absolutely is related. I talk to a lot of people like, I don't need to talk about any of this. I don't think about work when I go home, and I do all this stuff when I get home. And I'm like, how happy
So there's
are you?
part of the Severance television program.
How happy are you? How happy are you at either one?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm like, yeah, how happy are you at either one? And then it gets real weird because the reality is we're probably not.
Yeah.
Like you just can't spend that much time away from your family. You can't spend that much time hating your life. I'm not saying that everybody that compartmentalizes work does that, because there's some people that just show up and they're able to be consistent. They do the thing. They're super happy. Maybe their priorities are focused on home. So they show up, they put in their 40, they leave. They don't have to take work home at the end of the day. It's a super good deal. And if that's awesome for you and you feel fulfilled, you feel like you're moving in the right direction, 100%. I just get it when people say they're not happy, they're not satisfied with something, they don't like the engagement at work, they don't like their reality, and they're miserable about it, but they're not doing anything to work on it. So the mental health thing is going to take a more holistic approach. It might make some people uncomfortable to talk about personal things at work. And again, we are not mental health professionals. So your job as a leader, a manager, is not to therapize someone fully. I want to make that super clear. However, you should be holding them to a process. Are you going to seek professional help? Are you going to seek medical help? Are you going to seek some sort of time off? Are you going to do something? Yeah. I'm interested in your process because I want you to be successful. So I'm going to hold you to that, because I'm not just going to let you wallow, flounder around, and not get better.
Okay, we're going to end on an exciting note. So what is something happening within the Think3D universe, as if we don't have 5,000 options to pick from, Daniel?
Oh boy.
That is new or upcoming that has you so excited?
And if I seem not excited physically, it's because I'm very, very tired. So this is about all the enthusiasm we can muster, but I muster it.
Don't worry, I'll do it for you.
Thank you. So I would say in the following order, and it's not about the following order of what gets me most excited. I just think it's what's the coolest for the general public to get into and see. Combat Culture and Culture Cove.
So good.
So if you don't know, we occasionally like to do physical sports and combatives. Vonnie's a very avid boxer. He's a very talented boxer. He's a coach. He's a referee. So is Manny. A few of us have some other backgrounds in other disciplines, maybe not as refined as like boxing from a young age, but we enjoy the sport, whether that's more ground stuff. A few of us enjoy archery and some other things like that. So the Cove, if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock, is our 10 acres, I think 10 acres, with a bunch of buildings on it. We bought a lodge and an acreage late last year, early this year. And we've converted it into a retreat center and a space. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful building. It was built in 2004. It's gorgeous. We have a massive gymnasium on site, which actually has a boxing ring in it. We've got 20, I think it's either 20 or 22 foot rings or mats if you're into BJJ or wrestling or any of that ground stuff. We got mats, we got a boxing ring, we got a whole bunch of weights and equipment. We have a whole bunch of other wellness activities too. We got meditative spaces, yoga spaces. We have kind of a massage therapy room. We've got cold plunge, sauna, full commercial kitchen. So depending on this type of experience people are looking for, they can scale up the food up or down. Then Combat Culture Cove. September 13th, the Culture Cove ribbon cutting is down in Meckling, South Dakota. Go find that event on Facebook. It's all over our Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, things like that. The Culture Cove ribbon cutting. It's going to be a heck of a time. We have a lot of fun people there. I'm going to have some of our dear friends from Sioux Falls making drinks, making food. We're going to have a whole bunch of people hanging out. So it's going to be a really good time to celebrate just a next step in our organization, some of our business stuff. Outside of that, Culture Con.
Hey.
Insert air horns here. But Culture Con's coming up October 29th. CultureCon Sioux Falls. I don't know if we've made an official announcement or anything like that. For the few of you that might have caught something early on, we were planning on doing Black Hills. We're going to bump that to next year. So stay tuned. Still happening. But this year we're going to focus on Sioux Falls. It's October 29th. The theme is Trust the Process. It's super spacey, super fun.
Gosh, I'm so
That's got me really excited. I'm excited too because I'll be having a little bit more of a different style of speak this year. It's going to be a little bit more a little bit less performative of like a speak and more of like a workshop. So taking people through some skill stuff, which is cool. Vonnie's got some surprises up his sleeve.
Oh yeah,
I'd say. I almost said he's got some sleeves.
Yeah.
He's got surprises up his sleeve. We got some cool stuff planned for you guys. So CultureCon October 29th. And then the U, as we call it the U jokingly, but Think 3D University is our newest, I would say our newest evolution of like what I would consider a really comprehensive kind of our gold standard product or program. If you're interested in experience that in my opinion, again, it's not unbiased because again, it's not all original. I can't take credit for all of it, but I'm really excited with how this thing's come together. It's a really, really incredible program. Like I said at the beginning, we combine experiential, reflective, and then hands-on education to not only give you that personal development aspect, which I think is important. A lot of people need that as a leader. Again, it's foundational, that self-work. Some organizations would have you think that it's a waste of time. You can go get personal or professional development on your own. And I think that is a really, really poor outlook on it. If you're not combining the two and understanding how they're related and understanding the impact that your personal development makes on your professional growth and skill set as a leader or just an operator at your job. I operate this machine. I'm in charge of making these things. If you are a better person, more confident, more empathetic, more humble, more kind, more motivated, more inspired, more connected with your belief system and aligned with your purpose, you're going to be way better at your job. So I think we incorporate both those things. We can give people technical tools and personal development. So Think 3DU, it's happening right now. It can happen anytime. If you or your organization are curious, I got about 12 professionals from all over the country. Some folks in the East Coast, some folks down in the Southwest, a couple of folks in Tennessee. This next cohort starts tomorrow, actually.
Yeah.
So 8/29, we're gonna have a different cohort. I think Megan, I think you're going through that. I think you're going through this cohort, so she'll be able to tell you firsthand how fun it is. But those things, I'd say the Cove is super exciting. If you're looking for a retreat center, an event center, an experience to come down at one of our, maybe it's not a team retreat for you, but you want to go on your own personal retreat, we've got availability for that stuff. You want to come down and learn how to box? Combat Culture, September 27, 28, 29.
Yep.
Is coming up. So go to our website, go to our social media, go figure some of these things out and see when these things are happening, and stay tuned. As always, just a shameless plug, like and subscribe to the YouTube if you're there, follow on Facebook, follow on LinkedIn. As far as we know, we try our best to get us all these social media things, all these events and all this content out to you. But what really helps with that is you guys jumping in and engaging on posts, liking, sharing, subscribing to stuff like that, just so we can get more of our content in front of people, because we really like having intentional conversations and exploring ideas and topics. Next one of these is September 25th. Go, like I said, when you're subscribing to all of our channels and notifications, make sure you keep an eye on your calendar. Wednesday, September 25th, we'll be back in action talking about surveys part 2, maybe more in depth.
Awesome.
And we're out. Thank you, Tone.
I'll say more things next time.
Well, I was gonna say shout out to Tone as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of CultureCon,
That I am.
Oh man.
That I am.
I made a divot